Hi, I'm Cathy Neptune, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm going to share with you tips, tools, and recipes to make your time in the kitchen fun, fast, and fabulous. And I'm going to read you a note. I get a lot of inspiration from the notes. Thank you for sending these in to me. And it got me to thinking, and it's a good angle to come on a recipe. It says, "Hi, Cathy. Love your show and easy to follow recipes." Well, thank you very much. It's a question. I need small scale recipes for just my hubby and I, but that I can easily increase for company as well. So that got me to thinking. I said, keep cooking. It's Anna from Harvard. So thank you, Anna. That's a great note and a great question. And this recipe and most of my recipes are easily scaled, but I get where you're coming from. You don't want a lot of leftovers. And this time of year, I'm taking the leftover ingredients, if you would, from your St. Patrick's Day corned beef and cabbage that you've made. And I thought we'd do something interesting with the leftover corned beef. Of course, you could make a corned beef hash, which I think is fabulous for breakfast. But we're going to bump it up a little bit and use it and make a stuffed cabbage with the corned beef mixture, which is going to be very reminiscent of a hash, corned beef hash as well. And this recipe certainly is worth making a corned beef for and cutting up your leftovers, which I've cubed here. And I want to start with our cabbage. And I'm going to show you what I've done with the potatoes, because the potatoes are going to go into the hash as well. And I've cubed up probably 2 large potatoes, and I'm not going to be too fussy on the quantities here, because you can make more or less potatoes, and I made a little extra because I'm going to use the rest. I'm not going to use all of my corned beef, so I'm going to make a corned beef hash for a breakfast as well. But I'd say there's 2 medium to large potatoes that I've diced up. And what I did it in a skillet for a specific reason. I added half of the corned beef stock and half water to the pan, just so it comes up to the top of these cubed potatoes. And I cooked them in that liquid for about 12 minutes until they were fork tender. And I added a pat of butter, because potatoes and butter, you know how that goes. And now all the liquid has boiled out, and I'm going to lightly saute these potatoes so they get a little crispy. And that, whenever you can add flavor and texture, that's going to make the potatoes hold up really well. So when you combine them with the corned beef, they don't get all mushy. And what I have here, I chose a Savoy cabbage for our to line. We're going to line this in a cake pan that we have. I've sprayed and oiled, and we're just doing, per Anna's request, we're going to do a small two people portion. And before I line the pan, and it's a springform pan, I'm going to steam the cabbage leaves so they'll get soft and pliable, because our filling is going to go in there. And I like the Savoy cabbage because it's going to be a little more delicate and easier to form than the regular cabbage, which can be a little tough. And I'm cutting off the stem portion here, which is a little woody, and we'll do just a couple, because we're going to do the bottom of the pan and then we're going to layer our filling. And this is only going to take about 4 minutes, and I have a large pot of boiling water going on the stove. And you can cut the core off if it's easier to do. Might be a good idea. And another method that I tried, if you're not in a hurry, you can put the head of cabbage in your freezer and freeze it for about an hour, and it's the same as blanching your cabbage. It will come out good, but these stems are a little tough. And you want enough, kind of eyeball the size of your pan, you want enough to cover everything. And if you have extra, that's okay too. I'm just going to stir our potatoes. And this is the pot. I put a little bit of salt in there as well, in the water for the cabbage, because you want to flavor it. So you want to be careful not to burn those potatoes. I'm just going to cut around these leaves. It's always good to have a little more than what you think you're going to need. You always want to have a few more than you think. So look at how beautiful those are going to line very well in your pot. And we're all going to blanch these for about 4 minutes because, like I said, they're very delicate. And I think we're going to have plenty. Set that aside. And I'm going to stack them like so, because they fit better, easier into the pot like that. And I'm going to put these right in the pot and put your timer on. And I want to press those into the pan so that they're all covered with water. And I'll put the timer on 4 minutes. And press them into the bottom of the pan. Now potatoes are cooking nicely, and I'm going to gather all my ingredients for the filling, and we'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. Look at how beautifully blanched cabbage. That's just 4 minutes. But look at how pliable that is. And we picked some good leaves, and they're just cooling. I ran a little cool water over them. And don't forget that tip that you can freeze the cabbage too for about an hour, but 4 minutes for blanching is not a big deal if you're not in a hurry. So I'm going to take in a bowl here, and I'm going to crack an egg, and this is going to bind everything together. Now this, if you were doing a corned beef hash, you would put an egg on top. You wouldn't put it in a hash mixture. So that's a little bit different, and I'm just going to beat up the egg a little bit. And I have some corned beef that I cooked and drained, and I saved the juice from there in case the mixture is a little dry. So I'm going to eyeball what we're going to put into how much we're going to need. And I'd probably say 1.5 cups to start with is a good start, because this is the bowl, the cake pan that we're going to use to line and fill our mixture. So I'm just mixing the egg into the corned beef, and I have our potatoes right here that I'm just kind of cooling off a little bit because I don't want to cook the egg mixture. And I added a grated carrot at the very end, and I like the grated carrot because I don't want chunks of the carrot in there. They don't cook as quickly as the potato. And there's a thought I had. You could use, when you make a corned beef and cabbage dinner, you have your pot with the potatoes and the carrots and the onions, and you have leftovers of those, and you could probably put it in here, but I don't like the texture. I think everything gets mushy. So I made the fresh potatoes and the fresh carrots, and I sauteed an onion, about a medium-sized onion, so there's probably 1/2 cup of sauteed onion with a clove of garlic and a little bit of olive oil. And I'm adding that for flavor and blending that in with the corned beef mixture. And I'm going to let my potatoes cool. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to take our springform pan, and you could certainly double this recipe, Anna from Harvard, if you wanted to make a larger one. It makes a beautiful presentation for company. And I'm going to take a little melted butter, and I sprayed this ahead of time with some nonstick spray. But for flavor, and I like the butter adds a lot when the cabbage is in here, it kind of roasts the cabbage leaves as they cook, just brushing a little melted butter around the edge. And let's pick a nice, beautiful presentation, because when we're done, we're going to lift this and turn it upside down in the pan. So I'm going to put a round section in the bottom. And then for stability, and I'm going to do opposite. See how I have the stem here? I'm going to do another one on this side, just to give it a little bit of body. Okay, so I have there, and we're going to layer this, and I don't think we'll need more than those. We have some extra in between. So I'm going to go and get my potatoes that should be kind of cooled off. And you can see when I boiled the liquid out of the potatoes, the butter that was in there as they were simmering, I just did them to that level. Then they start to caramelize and brown, and I think that adds a nice flavor. I'm just going to add some in. You want about the same amount of potatoes as corned beef, your potato and carrot mixture. And I'm just going to add a little bit. And I think that's going to be really good for our filling. Maybe a few more potatoes. And these leftovers are going to be really, really good. Gives them a new life. And I don't think we need to add any liquid to this. And remember, the egg is in there to bind this all together. And I have my oven preheating at 350 degrees. And this is only going to take, because it's a smaller pan, it's only going to take about 30 minutes in the oven. Okay, and we're going to start filling our pan. And it depends on how many layers you can fit in here. Make sure the cabbage doesn't fold down. The first layer is the trickiest, because remember, this is going to be our top layer. So let me put it a little closer so you can see what we're doing. And pressing that down as you go, and especially pressing it towards the edges of your pan, because that's going to make the form when it bakes. You want it to go right to the up against the edges of your springform pan. That's what makes it going to look like a cake. And then we're going to add some more. Let's see what we have. Aren't these beautiful? They're so pliable and beautiful. And you can see how this nestles in, and it's forming sides up the sides with the layers. And again, we have our stem side here, so let's go the opposite. Let's do a smaller one here. We're going to do the opposite stem in the opposite direction, pressing it down as you go. And that's what it looks like so far. See how it's forming edges going up the side of the pan? And the other cabbage would just not be as pliable as this. And this is so beautiful and colorful, the Savoy cabbage. I'm going to press that. You could substitute rice for the potatoes if you'd like, but I think this is more traditional with all your leftover flavors. And we're going to serve this with a horseradish cream sauce on the very top. And I don't know how I did that, but we came out just right. But of course you could add more in if you found you needed it. Pressing it down very tightly. You could assemble this the day before as well and leave it in your refrigerator overnight. That would help solidify it. And a great presentation for a company dish if you wanted to double this recipe. And then let's get a pretty leaf for the top, which is going to invert on the bottom. Let's see. This is a good one. like so. Again, go in the opposite direction of the stem, and the stem is on this side. And then I like to trim a little bit, because you're not going to see this, but just so the edges don't burn. Or you can fold them in, but I find this works pretty good. You can just pull them off. That's going to be great. Get them all in. And then you can patch it where you need it. But I think that's going to be just fine. We could even do another little piece on the top. I'm going to trim that. Just because we have so much cabbage that we already prepared. Put that over the top. And then, packing it in really well, I'm going to brush it with some butter on the top, just to make it nice and golden color. And we're going to pop this into the 350-degree oven. And I'm going to put it on a baking tray. And I suggest that because sometimes you never know if these pans are going to leak. So I'm going to put it on there into the oven. And I would check it after about 35 minutes and see if it's done. But you basically, everything is cooked in here. So you're just warming it up and doing the form. It's going to sink down into the mold. So I'm going to get this in the oven. And when we come back, we're going to do our dessert. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. We have our corned beef stuffed cabbage in the oven. We had leftover corned beef and potatoes, so I'm making hash tomorrow for breakfast. And it freezes well, too. Now we're going to do our, it's kind of a take on a traditional bread pudding, but we're going to have a whiskey cream sauce to go along with it. And I think bread pudding is so New England. It's just a great way of using your leftover breads and so forth. It's a great way to go, and very economical, and it's kind of like a custard with bread in it. It's very easy to do. And I'm doing my room temperature eggs. I always bake with room temperature ingredients. It just makes it easier. And I'm going to whisk the eggs just so they're easier to incorporate into your other ingredients. And I have in here 1 cup each of half and half and 1 cup of milk. So that's 2 cups of liquid all together. I'm going to mix that up. This is something, too, you could do ahead of time. And there's a savory version. We're doing a dessert one. But did you know you can also make a savory bread pudding? And it's great for breakfast. Instead of the sugar, you add in onions and mushrooms and cubed cooked ham and cheese. You can even put spinach. You can do a vegan version with just spinach and mushrooms. Here's a great thing, and you make it the night before and leave it in the refrigerator, put it in a casserole pan, and just bake it, and it's ready to go. Great for the holiday seasons. And then we're going to add, usually it's 1 full cup of sugar, but I'm going to do something a little different because I can. I did 3/4 of a cup of maple sugar and about 1/4 cup of maple syrup. Because we're going to do, I think we're doing maple syrup. We're going to do a version with the whiskey. I thought with the whiskey cream sauce, this would be awesome flavor combination. So about that much maple syrup. A little bit of, always do a pinch of salt. It just brings out the sweetness. So just not even like a scant, a pinch of salt, because we have the eggs, and the eggs need a little help with that. And then cinnamon. Again, all these flavors are going to be good. About 1/2 teaspoon. And you can certainly double this recipe as well. And this is the liquid vanilla bean that comes like this. Instead, it's like a vanilla bean paste, they call it. Wonderful flavor. And you can use regular vanilla flavoring if you have it. Just make sure and buy the real vanilla. It really makes a difference. And I'm just combining all of this. Oh, the cinnamon smells good. Sometimes I put orange zest in this. You can put apples and do an apple bread pudding in the fall. There's so many things. I like to give you ideas of different things that you can do that your family would like. This is kind of a comfort dish, if you will. Now, we've got everything in there, and this is going to have the whiskey sauce on top. But I've prepared some little ramekins. And I like to bake individual ones. First, I think they're very elegant. But they also cook a little quicker. And did I put the timer in on here? I'm going to put the timer on here for 35 minutes, and I'm going to check it. And these will bake probably in about 25 to 30 minutes. So I have that all. Just make sure you get the sugar kind of sinks to the bottom, so make sure you get it all incorporated. And then these are bread cubes. I just had a regular French bread loaf. And you can let them dry overnight, cube them up, but I didn't have time to do that. So I put them in the oven at about 250 for about half an hour. And they just got really crispy. And it's a good thing to do. So we're going to toss the bread in here. And the reason you want to toast your breadcrumbs is usually this is a French bread loaf or an Italian loaf. Brioche would be very good. But brioche is very soft, so you want to make sure and dry that in the oven really well or overnight. But the reason you want to dry your cubes is bread has a lot of moisture. If you've ever squished bread together, you know how it sticks together when it's fresh? Well, that's all moisture that you have in your bread. And that's not a bad thing, but it prevents it from absorbing the liquid and puffing up. So this is another dish, you could do ahead of time and let it soak overnight even in the refrigerator, and there'll be no liquid left. It'll all go in to your bread cubes. And I probably used 3 to 4 cups of bread cubes in here. And there's still a lot of liquid. I may just use them all. So let's say 4 cups of dry bread cubes. Great recipe for leftovers. You can even put your bread and save it, store it in your freezer. So when you have enough, you could do a bread pudding, savory or sweet. Also great for bread stuffing. So these little ramekins I've sprayed and then in the bottom so they're non-stick. And getting the juice and all from the bottom, I'm going to divide these evenly as I can in these 4 pretty dishes. You could also bake this in a regular pan, like a 9x9 or an 8x8 pan. And it would just take a little longer to cook, probably 45 minutes. But you'll know pretty much when it's done. Okay, I guess we'll just pour the rest of it in here. And we're going to top it with a sauce and a little whipped cream. And these are going to go in the oven, same temperature, 350. And we're going to bake these for about 35 minutes. And we have about 31 minutes left. So give or take, we're going to check everything after about 30 minutes. And when we come back, we're going to make our sauces, a wonderful horseradish sauce for our corned beef hash casserole or cake. And then we're going to make a beautiful whiskey sauce for the bread pudding. So we'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. We have everything in the oven, and we've got a few minutes left to cooking. And like I said, both of those recipes you could do the night before. Double the recipe if you're doing for company, and wait until you see the presentation on especially on the corned beef and hash stuffed. We're calling it a cake, but it's a great presentation. So to go along with our corned beef hash stuffed cabbage, we're going to do a cream sauce. And in here I have some regular sour cream, and I'm going to add a few more ingredients to this. And it's probably things that you have on hand. A little bit of Dijon mustard, probably half a teaspoon, and some green chopped chives, just the green part, probably a good 2 teaspoons of that. Well, let's do the whole thing. And this is fun. If you've never had fresh horseradish, you can buy it in the container, and it's good, but there's nothing like, it's like fresh vanilla and not fresh vanilla. Grate your own horseradish on a rasp, much like you would fresh ginger. Big, huge difference if you buy fresh ginger. And let me know your comments. If you're trying these new things and new adventures, it makes a huge difference in your finished product. So I probably have a slight teaspoon of the horseradish because it is very strong. And I'm just going to blend that together. And whatever I have left over on the horseradish that I don't use, wrap it up really well, put it in the freezer, and label it so you don't forget what it is. Otherwise, you'll think it's ginger. But it freezes very well, and you peel it like you would ginger. But it does look very similar to ginger, so that's why I label it, and it'll keep in your refrigerator in your freezer rather, for a couple of months. And it's great on a roast beef sandwich with mayo. You can add mayo to this mixture and put it on a French au jus dip. It would be outstanding. So I always like to add a little bit of salt to bring out that flavor, and I'm going to add a clove of garlic as well. So just a half a teaspoon of salt, because this is going on the corned beef, and that has a lot of salt in there. And then I always like fresh ground pepper. Gives it a little kick. And you want to taste this afterwards and see, you can add, that's what I like about these recipes tonight. You can add more or less of any of these ingredients and taste it. And if you want more horseradish, because it is very strong, then go ahead and add a little more or less to your taste, but always err on the conservative side. And we're going to add a clove, pretty good sized clove of fresh garlic. And that gives it a nice little kick. Adding flavor wherever you can. That was a tough clove of garlic. And again, making this the night before will get all these flavors to meld really well together. And I'm going to taste this, and I'm going to turn this into a sauce. I'm just going to try a little taste. That's perfect. It's so good. And you can do a dollop of this, but I saved that liquid from the corned beef that we did. You put it in the refrigerator overnight, and you can skim off the fat. But look at the liquid. It's like liquid gold. And that's all flavor of the corned beef. I cooked with onions and carrots and celery. You can taste that mustard in there. So complements the green onions and the horseradish. So we're making a horseradish cream sauce. And you can make it as thin or as thick. I think I'd like it a little bit thinner, but I want it to stand up to the flavors as well. So again, according to what you like, that makes you the chef of your own kitchen. And I love that. So you can see it's not a paste, but when we put it on top, we'll just spread it right on the top of our corned beef. Or what I was going to do, because I thought it'd be a really fun way to go, grab a paper towel. I'm going to take these little tureens And I'm going to put this in the tureen. So everybody, not everybody would maybe not like horseradish sauce. So I'm going to put these in these little mini tureens and pretend we're at a fancy restaurant and serve this alongside so everybody can help themselves. How cute is this? I think I should charge for this dinner. What do you think? But taking something as simple as leftover corned beef and turning it into something spectacular. How nice a presentation for your company if you did something like this. Way to go. If it wasn't me, I'd be impressed because it takes no time at all to make something from scratch. And like I said, you can do a bottled horseradish, but you never use the whole jar and you end up throwing it out. Just buy what you need and it's spectacular. It makes a huge difference. Now I'm going to grab my pan over here and we're going to make a whiskey sauce. Very, very easy to do. And a lot of these ingredients, you have on hand at home, I'm sure. I'm going to take a pat of butter and a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Put it in a sauce pot. And you know me, I like the heavy bottom sauce pots because we're making a sauce. I'm going to put in a little bit of butter. And I'm using the melted butter we had before. Oh, I have butter in there. Never mind. Forget that. Let's see. A little bit of cream. That's half and half. Pinch of salt. Again, to bring out the sweetness. And you don't want to add your whiskey right now. We're just going to melt this on the stove. And keep an eye on it so the sugar doesn't burn. Now, why do you think we're not going to add the whiskey while it's cooking? You know why? This is a test. If you add the whiskey over a flame, it's all the alcohol is going to boil out. So what's the point in adding whiskey? So we're going to do right at the end, keep an eye on it so it doesn't burn. And we're going to check on our goodies in the oven and we'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. We have our bread puddings out of the oven and they're settling down, and the same with our little springform pan that I've opened up. Now let's hope it's very, very hot. And I let this set for probably 5 minutes just to let it settle. And are you ready to see this? That is our beautiful, I think it's beautiful, our corned beef stuffed cabbage cake. And doesn't it look like a cake? I think it looks fabulous. And then we have our horseradish cream sauce in our little tureens here. And I wanted to finish off our whiskey sauce for our beautiful bread puddings. And I'll show you how we do that. I've heated up the butter, the brown sugar, and a little bit of cream in here. And this is a bourbon whiskey. And we're going to put about a tablespoon in there. And we're not going to cook it off because you'd cook off all the alcohol. And I'm going to put a little in here. Oh, you can smell the butter and the whiskey. And the cream is in there. I'm going to pour that on the top. When we serve it, I'm going to put that right there for now. But what I want to do, I'm not sure how, well, I'm going to try a regular knife. And remember, we put an egg in this mixture so that it would kind of keep it together, kind of like you would with a meatloaf. Oh, I can smell the onions and the corned beef. I have a serrated, where's my little, oh, here it is, a little pie server. I thought that would be the best way to go. I'm going to turn it here so you can see. It's so dramatic. I mean, you serve this at the table, and you know what? You could even, for a little drama, you can put a little dollop on the top, like so, because we can. And you present this at the table. like this. And let's serve this. Look at that, how beautiful and layered. Can you see the different layers and the different flavors? And oh, it smells so good. And you serve that with your horseradish cream sauce on the side. So elegant, so beautiful, so delicious. And bringing your leftover corned beef hash to a new level. So buy an extra large corned beef this season for St. Patrick's Day, and you do this afterwards, and it's just a beautiful presentation. I would be happy to serve this to company. I think it's spectacular. And our little whiskey sauce goes on the top of your bread pudding, and it soaks in on that beautiful, fluffy, with the egg and the cream and the butter, and then a little bit, you could put ice cream on it, but just a dollop of whipped cream over the top, and let it settle in. What a beautiful post St. Patrick's Day feast. You've taken something and you have leftover bread. You can make something delicious. And I think that's the bread pudding with the Irish whiskey, I think, is a nod as well to the day after St. Patrick's Day, because why not? So I hope you try these recipes. Thank you to everybody for your inspirations, your questions, and your comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and may the fork be with you.